Hey guys, welcome back, and today we have another week of grosses, so let's get into it. And yes, I know my hair is a mess, deal with it. Up first, we have And Juliet, which went from 100% to 99%, and 1,135,470 to 1,037,776. Boop, the Betty Boop musical, it's not doing so hot. Last week 96% and 403K, this week 94% and 530K for 7 performances. So they're in previews, so their ticket price is a lot lower, but for a musical that's as expensive as Boop, you know, Akimbo, to an extent maybe Happy Ending, could do lower ticket prices in the beginning and do, you know, 400K, 500K, but this is not that kind of show, you know. Yes, their ticket prices can be cheaper, but this show, you know, especially in its second week of 7 performances, needs to have a 7 or a 6 in front of it at the minimum. Well, I get the strategy, but it points to a larger concern that the show is not getting the people into the seats, so they've had to reduce the prices for the show, and that's not a good sign. And for me personally, even if you start off with like a lower ticket price of $70, with each week you slowly increase that price of ticket. The ticket price went down from last week for Boop, which means that, like, if more people are willing to pay tickets and it's, you know, the demand is higher, or the supply is going to be more expensive. And so I feel like this points to a larger issue with Boop, and it's not getting good reception from audiences. And if you look at advanced ticket sales, it is not doing good at all. It is selling very poorly. So this show could be the next New York, New York. I mean, it is in a very tough position. And again, for 7 performances, you know, 530K, it's just not great. Now again, when the ticket price goes up and the post previews is when we'll get the full picture, when we can fairly assess it in all different directions. But at this moment in time, I do not have a good feeling about Boop. Vista Social Club is doing fantastic, 99% to 99%, and 795K to 891K. Cabaret, the Kit Kat Club, and this was the final week for the current stars, played to 93% last week, and 1,191,296 to 98%, and 1,327,072. Death Becomes Her continues to be a huge smash hit, 96% last week, 96.94% this week, and 1,138,120 to this week's 1,224,382. Boop, take notes. Gypsy continues to be very successful despite, you know, it falling off in terms of capacity. 83% last week, 89% this week, 1,160,276 last week. This week, 1,394,036. Hadestown had a surprising increase from 100.35 to 100.31, and 876K last week to this week's 933K. And I'm very happy about that, just because it's not got any huge stunt casting in it, and it's still doing very well. And as you know, Hadestown was in a bit of a rough patch in late 2023, and they had to bring in stunt casting, but luckily it's seeming to pay off. Hell's Kitchen, 89% to 88%, and 1,095,419 last week. This week, 1,113,907. Maybe Happy Ending, with Darren being off with the last couple of performances, did remarkably very well. And again, this is, I think, confirming my suspicion that while Darren is helping box office, it's not to an extent of an Audra McDonald, a Bette Midler. Nor is it going to have the kind of drop. Now, this was a bit of a sharper drop than previous weeks. It was 57,000 drop. But the show went from 100% to 98%, and 905K to 847K, which is still fantastic numbers. And I do have, I have looked at advanced sales for this week, and it is doing pretty much the same as if Darren was in the show. It's obviously selling a lot better in the last couple of performances because Darren's coming back at the end of the week. But I think that we will experience, like, you know, it will stay in the 800K range, 95% capacity, which is very good for this show, especially if it can't win Best Musical, as it's going to have huge competition with Dead Outlaw, and Darren obviously is not going to be with the show, for another year and a half. Moulin Rouge continues to be going downhill, 94% to 95%, and 997K last week to 1,070,743. Operation Mincemeat, which is extended until next year, selling out, and 735K to this week's 716K, and I'm very happy that an original musical is doing fairly well on Broadway, even though I'm not a huge fan of it. Although I do wonder, is it gonna be good for them to extend that late? Because if it doesn't win Best Musical with all the new competition, will it survive? Will it potentially close early? I could see that being a possibility. But again, it is selling very well in the next couple of weeks, and it is a relatively inexpensive production to put on, and it's doing better than Boop. It is making 600K, 700K, which is that beautiful sweet spot for an original musical, for something that's just started on Broadway. So I think if you're a fan of that show, you have nothing to worry about as of the current moment. Redwood is playing to 90% last week and 92% this week, and 846K to 893K. Which is a huge win for the show, as it's gotten panned by critics and audiences. Although I do wonder if it will close in August, because Idina Menzel is in the show until August, and it's not going to get nominated for Best Musical. It's not going to win Best Musical, even if it gets nominated. If I'm a producer, I close this with Idina, because if Idina Menzel was not in this show, this would be tanking harder than, I don't know, Be More Chill after the Tonys. Smash continued to do very good despite my review coming out, which you can see, and I didn't like it. I think it is going to be very front-loaded like Boop is. Both shows have great selling capacity, they're selling extremely well this week and next week, but if you look at after that, there's so many seats open. So last week 95%, and this week also 95%. And 715K to this week's 860K. So it is doing financially very well. It's exactly where it needs to be, but again, I suspect that it will fall off based on, I think, what the reviews are going to be, what audiences are saying, and I have a feeling like it might not even get Best Musical nomination. But I think that the fans of the TV show will give it a bit of a boost, but only for so long. That's just my opinion. We will see, but as of right now, Smash is doing very well. Sunset Boulevard is continuing to do very solid, even though, again, it has kind of fallen off from its high point. 86% to this week's 82%, and 1,114,231 last week to this week's 1,084,916. The Great Gatsby went from 98.93 to 99.15, and 1,260,045 to 1,240,101. And then we get to the last 5 years, which played to 5 performances, and it sold out, obviously, and played to 731K with an average ticket of 151. Obviously, I did not like this show. I like the show, I just don't like Nick Jonas in it. So how do we interpret this box office? Because this is going to be the thing that most people are going to be the most interested in, digesting and analyzing. In my opinion, this is an amazing start for the last 5 years. It's, not, as well-known as, other smaller musicals, or whatnot. I mean, it does have a sizable fan base, and with Nick Jonas, I'd say that this is a very good start. And again, they only had 5 performances, so it wasn't like they were gonna do $1 million, and their average ticket was only 150. So again, this was pretty good for the last 5 years, all things considered. Very solid start. I think last 5 years will make $1 million a couple of weeks in a row. But when you look at advanced sales, especially next week, it's selling very poorly. And I wonder if that is because of the quality of Nick Jonas's performance, rather than, Nick Jonas not being a name. Because he's a name. There's people that are interested in it because it is Nick Jonas. So I'm very interested to see what happens in the next coming weeks, because I think this isn't going to be the financial hit that producers are thinking it's going to be. But again, I want to preface by saying that this is an amazing start to the last 5 years. It's not a super expensive production. You know, most shows need to start at 731, 600K. It wasn't gonna do 800K or 900K unless the ticket price was like $200. And again, they only had 5 performances, so it's not like this is a disappointing start. This is a very solid start for the last 5 years. But I'm more interested to see what happens in the future, because I don't think it's going to be great. But again, it's a limited engagement, so honestly, it doesn't really matter how it does, because it's such a strict limited engagement. But I think this could if it does tank, or it doesn't make $1 million, or it goes to like 600K, 500K, it doesn't increase next week, which I think it will, so probably like 800K, Nick Jonas probably won't come back to Broadway for a long time, and I think we're all better for it. But for him, you know, it's not going to be great, because investors, producers won't want to invest in him, because they're seeing the bad performance and how that affects box office. And then finally, The Outsiders is selling out like always, 1,500,895 to this week's 1,428,808. So that's the box office for this week. Smash and the last 5 years are doing very well. However, I think that Smash will be very front-loaded. And I don't know if the last 5 years is going to hold its box office, and Boop is on very perilous ground. So let me know what you think in the comments. Like, sub, comment, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.